exactly.
Okay, so let's take it to the next step. So somebody's living in a very small market. They send photos to you. You think, wow, this person has a lot of potential. Then you contact, um, an agent, and let's say the person says, yes, yeah, I think this person has a lot of potential. What exactly is the next step?
Well, that would depend on the market. Then, if they were going to Asia, that would be a completely different thing because there's visas and a lot of documentation that we need to take care of for them.
Now, is that
So
something, excuse me, is that something you would do, or is that something that the agency in Asia would take care of?
it starts there where they will do the application and get all the paperwork done, and then they usually FedEx it to the model. If they're living in a different city from where we are, it is to them, and then they would go to the Japanese consulate and get that. If it's Japan, approved, and it's a very, it happens all the time. It's not a difficult process. It's just that there is certain things that we have to follow in order for a model to be able to go over there, because by law, the agencies in Japan have to cover certain expenses. Airline tickets will be paid for, accommodation. It's a much more, I don't
Is
want
it
to say
regulated?
regulated, that's the word, than it is in
Uh-huh.
some of the other markets. So, and if it's New York, again, they would just go there, and sometimes the agencies will pay their way and sometimes they won't. But my advice to models, if a big agency is interested in you and they want you to pay the ticket to go there, pay the ticket to go there, because they are not going to ask you to come unless they're pretty certain you're going to work, and that will be the best investment that you ever make. And even if
So,
they pay it,
oh,
Aaron, you're going to have to pay them back anyway. The
okay,
agents don't pay for things. They
oh,
advance.
okay, okay. So we'll start off with the Asian market. I still want to finish up a couple of things there, and then we'll move over to other markets. I guess the European market. So with all the visa work, the paperwork, the agency in Japan is taking care of all that, and they're paying for all that up front, correct?
Right, and they often give a guarantee. So even if the model doesn't work and make enough money to pay those initial expenses back, it's taken out of the guarantee. So uh, there used to be in the day, the guarantees were amazing back in the day. Now, not so much. It's just enough to cover the basic expenses. But at least when you leave there, you're not going to have to pay anything out of your own pocket. We love sending new models over to Asia.
And typically, how long would somebody initially go over there?
2 months. 2 months
Two
is the
months.
standard. Yeah,
And so the agency they have places for them to stay. They have people who might drive them around to the go-sees and
that's exactly it. They usually go in a bus all together to all the castings. And then when they get the job, they have to kind of figure out the area themselves and get themselves to the actual bookings. But for castings and things, they often are all taken together. And it'll be models from all other agencies together, too. It's fantastic.
now let's say now how young what would be the youngest age somebody could go over to Japan?
Well, I have sent models that were 14, but
14. And
but you
and
know
I'm
what, Aaron? The people in Asia are so good, and it's so safe, and it's just a fantastic market that I've never, had a problem. Knock on wood.
now is there an adult that typically would go with a 14-year-old or a
A
15-year-old?
parent is always welcome. That's never an issue. If a parent wants to go with the child, or even if they're 18, if by the time they're 18, we kind of expect them to be able to do it on their own. But if a parent, and usually they go for the first 2 weeks, that is fine. We welcome it. It's not a problem. Never an
Now
issue.
the parent will pay for their own airfare
Exactly. Yeah. They'll cover their own
and
expenses.
all their expenses. Okay,
Mhm.
so moving over to, working in Europe, how is that different than working, besides the, maybe some of the statistics, but are there any differences if you found somebody that you thought would be perfect for, Milan or in Germany or in the UK? Is there any different process for that?
Not really. It's different from Asia, but I normally don't send models over to Europe unless they've been to Asia first or worked in another market.
Why is that?
Well, You go to Europe to get tear sheets. You don't go to Europe to make an
Excuse me,
income.
would you just explain what tear sheets are?
Tear sheet, it's just like tearing a picture out of a magazine. We call
It's a
them tear sheets.
copy of the ad, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And the way that it used to work is that you could never work in New York unless you had been in Europe first. To be a fashion model and to be a major fashion model, you always had to go to Europe first, build your book, and then present yourself to the New York agencies. Now I can, we get girls and guys into New York right away when they're brand new and they've got no book. It's not like it used to be. However, having said that, I like them to learn the industry in a really safe environment where they're making some money and it's not as much of a financial burden on them first. So that is why I like the Asian market. And then possibly the European market to get some really nice European tear sheets, but we never send them there thinking that they're actually going to make a whole lot of money there. The money
It's
markets would be New York, Asia, and then once they're established, then they can go back, to Europe, and because they're already known, and they would be booking all the time. So, but plus, Aaron, I get a lot of models from Europe already, so they're already there.
And then would you still send them to Asia even if they're living in Europe?
Yes, yeah,
That's interesting.
definitely.
So
It's
basically, in some ways, you're trying to give them the experience, the exposure, so that they can come back and work in New York, which is where I'm assuming, or maybe I shouldn't assume, I should just ask, is that where fashion models can make the most money by working in New York?
Well, New York is the ultimate. It's, where American Vogue is, the big magazines. So it is the ultimate, but they work the whole circuit. It depends on the seasons. So they might go to Asia for a couple months and they'll go to New York, or they might do the shows in Europe. So they're traveling all the time. That's the ideal situation once you start making it. You're never in one place for too long. I would say 2 months maximum at a time, unless you're really established and living permanently in one of those
So
markets.
so fashion models are nomads.
Yes, they're like rock stars.